What it be, y'all? Resident 47 back, representing for the Record Podcast. And this episode I originally recorded on Tuesday and uploaded the same day. But this is a re-upload because I wasn't happy with how it turned out. Was stuttering, pausing a lot, losing train of thought. So I'm still getting used to this podcast shit. Want to give this episode another go. And today, I'm going to be talking about, in my opinion, one of the most underrated bands of the 90s. They're in my top 3. The front woman is in my top 5 musicians ever. And I'm talking about the Minneapolis punk rock outfit, Babes in Toyland. Now, something I did not mention on that episode, how I got into the band. I got into the band in 2009. My pops had 2 CDs of theirs, Fontanelle and the Natural Babe Killers compilation from 2000. I was in first grade at the time, so when I heard that, I was big into Nirvana, Korn, and Slipknot, and also Tool. But when I heard this band, it threw me off. I was like, I'm not feeling this. So my dad kept playing Fontanelle in the ride, and I would hear tracks like Bruised Violet, Mother, Bluebell, all that shit. But 2017 comes around, and I hear the band again, and he plays me Sweet 69, and my mind was blown. And just the way Kat was controlling her voice, Lori's drumming, the sound of the guitars, the breakdowns were amazing. Shit like that. So he also played me some more tracks, and I was sold. Now, how the band started. First off, there are like 2 official members, which are Kat Bjelland, the vocalist and guitarist, Lori Barbero, drums, and secondary vocalist. And they had like a long list of bass players, but the 2 main ones were Michelle Leon from 87 to 92 and Maureen Herman from 92 to 96. So the band started in 1997. It was originally just Kat and Lori. They met at a barbecue. Then Lori met Michelle at I think like some punk venue. But before there was Michelle, Courtney Love was originally the bass player, but she got kicked out. And Kat and Courtney they go way back from like to the mid 80s. They had a band called Pagan Babies, and they had a demo EP called Realize, which is pretty forgettable. And originally the band was going to be called Swamp Pussy, but Lori came up with the name Babes in Toyland after a Disney movie from 1934, and they went to the studio in 89, and then in 1990 they dropped their debut album Spanking Machine, which is one of my favorite albums of all time, man. Swamp Pussy, like I said, was going to be the band's name. He's My Thing, the original version, Vomit Heart, fucking Bodo Rap, Lashes, Dust Cake Boy. But my favorite track is You're Right. Michelle has a very dope bass line on that track. Just raw, garage basement punk rock, very high octane. It was produced by Jack Endino, who produced Bleach, Nirvana's first album. It was recorded at the same studio, Reciprocal Recording. But I just love Kat's vocals on this album. Lot of screaming. Lori's drumming has a lot of like really groovy tom breakbeats. Get your head nodding. But Spanking Machine is a underground punk rock masterpiece in my opinion. So in 1991, they got picked up by Sonic Youth for their Goo album, doing the tour campaign for that. And that was documented in the film 1991, The Year Punk Broke. You had Babes in Toyland, of course, Sonic Youth, of course. Also had Nirvana, the Ramones, Dinosaur Jr., and Gumball. But the only time Toyland ever appears on that DVD is the Reading 91 performance of Dust Cake Boy. And they killed that shit. The Reading 91 set was amazing. Love the Nirvana shit on there too. I'm a diehard Nirvana fan, like I said before. And the same year, they dropped an EP called To Mother. And that title comes from the fact that Kat's mother passed away during the sessions. So rest in peace. And a picture of her from like 5 or 6 years old appears on the cover. But this is a very solid follow-up to Spanking Machine. Catatonic, Mad Pilot, Left My Head Off. But my favorite track is Ripe. Very noisy, like I said, about Spanking Machine. A lot of screaming in this track too. And there's an early version of Quiet Room that appears at the end of the EP. And that was originally a Pagan Baby song. But this one's just instrumental. But, fuck. If you can hear that in the background, they're doing the monthly fucking tornado siren test, so I apologize for that. But getting back to Mother, very dope EP. My only complaint would be the mixing. You can barely hear the bass in this record, like the kicks and the guitar bass. And shit got kind of rocky at the end of night one because there was a friend of the band / roadie named Joe Cole who got shot in Minneapolis, and he was dating Michelle at the time, so she was so fucked up off of that she couldn't play shows, so she left the band. And then they started putting the word out they need a new bass player, and then they recruited Maureen Herman. So after that, they went back to the studio, this time Pachyderm Studios, where another Nirvana album was recorded, In Utero. But they went to the studio and they knocked out Fontanelle. Now this, in my opinion, is their fucking magnum opus. Everybody stepped their game up on this album. They recruited Lee Ronaldo from Sonic Youth to do production, and he killed that shit. Very dark and atmospheric. Really brings out the best in music. But, man, Bruised Violet, the opening track, slaughtering Courtney Love. I know the Cat's gone on record and said that song's not about her, but I still think it is. I mean, when you just read the lyrics, it's obvious. But nonetheless, fucking banger right now. Handsome and Gretel, very hard body, raunchy shit. Blood, Won't Tell. I like the interlude track, Short Song. Jungle Train. Mother is, like I said, one of the songs I remember hearing back in '09, and that shit is crazy. Closing track, Gone. Cat breaking beer bottles in the studio. But just her voice on this is at its best. Like, vicious, haunting. Like I said, her voice control is effortless, especially on this album. The way she can go from a scream to like soft delivery is flawless. And Lori's drumming hits a lot harder than it does on the first album. She got a new setup for this record. Maureen Herman has those dark bass lines. Just an absolute masterpiece. 5 mics, whatever you want to say. I highly recommend that album to those who love like that grunge shit of the 90s. Underrated from that era. But then that is what really started giving them some traction, and people started listening to them. Because around this time, they got their first big deal. And then in 1993, they scored a spot on the Lollapalooza tour. And that had a stacked lineup with, like, Tool. I'm a fucking big-time Tool fan. Primus, also a big fan of theirs. Rage Against the Machine, Alice in Chains. And when the tour came to Minneapolis, they put out another EP called Painkillers. And to be 1,000... this one I am kind of iffy on. They just kind of switched up their approach to this record. A lot more laid back. And just not like it's in your face as the last 2 records. But I do like the bonus track, Fontanelle. That's them performing the entire Fontanelle album at a New York venue called CBGB's. But you got a re-recorded version of He's My Thing, Laredo, really good poetry on that song is Stick Kite, which is a pretty cool title. Ragweed, the Lori solo track, Angel Hair, and then, like I said, Fall Nolette. That's the entire EP. Not bad, just thought it could have been better. And then in 1994, they took a break. Kat married this. He married Stu. She married Stu Spasm from Lubricated Goat, and they made a band called Crunt, and they released a self-titled album, which I'm not a big fan of that album at all. Only time Kat sings on that record is Unglued, which is a fire track. But I just don't like Stu's voice. I'm sorry if anybody out there is a fan of that album. Just my opinion. But the next year, Babes in Toyland did come back with their third album, Nemesis Sisters. And in my opinion, this album is kind of underrated. I mean, they kind of dialed things back on this album. Like they were starting to do that with Painkillers. But they do have some more high octane, adrenaline pumping songs like Sweet 69. Like was one of the first was the track that won me over. Fucking Hello, oh yeah, 22, REL, fucking Memory, and Lori has a lot more solo tracks on here. She has like Drivin', I think it's Middleman, and then Deep Song are the three songs she has in there. Maureen even has a solo track called Killer on the Road. And what they were going for, this was like everybody was had creative input on this album. It wasn't just Kat writing all the lyrics. So you got like some cover songs like All By Myself and We Are Family, which in my opinion, I don't care for those tracks. But for the most part, a very solid album. Highly recommend it if you like the first two albums. And then, sadly, that was the last thing they put out. They got off the label they were on. Lori Barbero started up a label called Spanish Fly Records. Just a lot of random shit happening with the band. Maureen left. Michelle joined back. Then she left. Talks of Elizabeth Davis from 7 Year Bitch joining. They were going to drop an EP in 97. Just nothing happened. But in 98, Kat did drop another side project. She dropped a soundtrack called Songs for the Witchblade, which had the last two Toyland tracks recorded, Mater Dolorosa and Astro Antiquity. You can also find those on the Intermenstrual box set that came out in 2001. So, they went silent in the late 90s, but in 2001 they did their last tour. And the very last show they performed was in Minneapolis. And you can pick that up on hard copy. It's the live album called Minneapolism, Live for the Last Time. And let me get a drink here real quick, and then we'll get into the post-Toyland era. Alright. My fucking siren's still going off, but whatever. 2001, Kat Bjelland starts up another band called Catastrophe Wife with her husband at the time, Glenn Matson, who was the drummer in the band. And they dropped their first album, Amusia 0102, which has some bangers on it like Gone Away, Boomerang Doll, Get Go, probably my favorite song of theirs, Night Fight. Those are my favorite tracks in theirs. The rest I thought were just meh. But in 2004, I dropped another album called All Kneel, which is a very solid album in my opinion. You have like what the fuck, Liberty Bell, which was the single off the album, Sweetheart, Baby Doll, Laying to Rest. Catastrophe Wife was dope. I'm pretty sure anyone that fucks with Babes in Toyland knows about the band. But in 2007, they were going to come out with an album called Pregnant. But then Kat Bjelland had to go for treatment, mental treatment. So that band folded. And then in 2014, Babes in Toyland comes back. They reunite. There was, again, plans for a fourth album. But they just never went to the studio. All they did, I think for the most part, were just live shows. Wish I would have gone to see them because their shows are fucking amazing. They get into that music, they just go off. Like, if you've seen some of their performances on YouTube, you know what I mean. If you've been to a show, you know what I mean. But it sucks that they never came out with an album because, like, imagine the material they had after, like, or during their heyday. So in 2017, they disappear again, and as of 2020, I think it's officially stated that they're no more. So that is the history of Babes in Toyland and all of Kat Bjelland's side projects from 1984 up to nowadays. And I hope you all enjoyed. Leave a like, give some positive feedback in the comments, subscribe, and I'm out of this bitch. Peace.